Before we continue on to part 5 of the Pocket Guide to Action, 116 Meditations on the Art of Doing by Kyle Eschenroder, know that Kyle Eschenroder gets no money from this audiobook. So please consider supporting him by purchasing the book digitally or in physical copies on Amazon. Part 5. Benefits of Action. Action may not always bring happiness, but there is no happiness without action. Benjamin Disraeli. Action shuts up false morals. We often don't take action because we fear failure. I don't think we do. We've been failing since we were born. We failed to walk. We failed to make the team. We failed to properly write an A. We were born into a life of constant failing. Every day is a failure to be who you will be tomorrow. Sure, at some point we start feeling ashamed of failure. I'm not convinced that that's what we're actually afraid of, though. So what are we actually afraid of? Being rejected by the tribe, the boss, the girl, by the audience, by the mob. These things set our amygdalas on fire. Humans need humans. We fear that if we do what we want, we will step on other people's toes. We might take a wrong turn and be rejected. If you are fully yourself, the tribe may label you an outcast and you'll never be included again. If we fail, we're guaranteed to get love. Failures who follow the rules are forgiven. The ones who go out and disrupt the natural order, no way. Action shuts up the mind that is concerned with rules. Action is concerned with creation. It's concerned with what is, not what should be. Action kills addiction. We're addicted to everything. There are literally chemicals that compel us to stay on Reddit looking at cat pictures. Every novelty squirts little chemicals into our system. We have to fight it if we can't avoid it. We're addicted to compliments and looking at other people's living their lives on Facebook. We're addicted to TV shows and sugar. We're addicted to running away from the thing we know we should be doing. It takes one moment of strength to ignore the addiction and take action. You stop craving ice cream 5 minutes into a run. The itch to check Instagram ebbs the minute you turn off your phone. As soon as you start, the addiction is destroyed. Action breathes life into cliches. We know cliches are there for a reason. Maybe they aren't all correct, but they've served some purpose for a long time. We can't truly appreciate them, though, until we have direct experience. Until we come face to face with something that makes us say, that's what Grandpa was talking about all those years. Action puts time on your side. He not being busy being born is busy dying. Bob Dylan. Time works against anything that is stagnant. Machines that aren't used rust. Water that stays still turns to poison. Sharks that don't swim suffocate. When you take action, you are putting time on your side. You are ensuring that you learn with time. That time gives you more opportunities instead of diminishing them. Action uses time to create new potentialities and even new lives. Action is genius. Einstein said, "It's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer." He first envisioned himself riding along with a light beam when he was a young boy. That vision stuck with him into his 30s. He couldn't stop thinking about it until he could explain it. Thomas Edison has given us many cliches about the importance of hard work, the truth of which, like all cliches, you don't really understand until you've lived through the action. A favorite. Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Friedrich Nietzsche had a poetic way of saying the same thing. Do not talk about giftedness, inborn talents. One can name great men of all kinds who were very little gifted. They acquired greatness, became, quote, geniuses, as we put it, through qualities the lack of which no one knew what they were would boast of. They all possess that seriousness of the efficient workman which first learns to construct the parts properly before it ventures to fashion a great whole. They allowed themselves time for it, because they took more pleasure in making the little secondary things well than in the effect of a dazzling whole. Scott Fitzgerald points to the dazzling whole referred to by Nietzsche here. Genius is the ability to put into effect what is in your mind. Action is required to slowly build the bridge from imagination to reality. Your craft is your chosen tool to express what is in your mind. It will be frustratingly bad at first. It is only with diligent practice that we can sharpen the tool and see more defined expressions of our mind in the internal world. Action is inspiration. Many of the greatest writers explain their creative process as sitting down and writing. It's the effort that opens you up for inspiration. Nobody achieves greatness except through intense practice over a long period of time. We try to get around to this. We see people whose first novel was a bestseller or who created a successful first business venture. We should be them. What our stories rarely include is the time that these prodigies put in ahead of time. Left out is the sacrifice and pain they've suffered personally because of their intense dedication. Inspiration comes to those who work. There is a muse, but he's not going to come fluttering down into your writing room and scatter creative fairy dust all over your typewriter or computer. He lives in the ground. He's a basement kind of guy. You have to descend to his level. And once you get down there, you have to furnish an apartment for him to live in. You have to do all the grunt labor, in other words, while the muse sits and smokes cigars and admires his bowling trophies and pretends to ignore you. Do you think that's fair? I think it's fair. He may not be much to look at, that muse guy, and he may not be much of a conversationalist, but he's got inspiration. It's right that you should do all the work and burn all the midnight oil, because the guy with the cigar and the little wings has got a bag of magic. There's stuff in there that can change your life. Believe me, I know. Stephen King in On Writing. Action is Inspiration, Part 2. You don't need another motivational quote laid over a picture of a mountain. Think about what happens every time you go on a motivational image or video binge. You jump from image to image, releasing a little more dopamine with each click, like an addict. Then you get to a point, maybe an hour later, and realize that all the motivation did was kill time. Now you're exhausted and have no energy to do anything else. A much better way to inspire yourself is to take action. Work on your project. Take the first step towards starting a new habit. Write the first paragraph of a blog post. Do something. The only information that stays inspiring in the long run is the information that we apply. Knowledge is not power, it's frustration. Applied knowledge is power. When your default is action, inspiration builds on itself. Snowball. It's not the load that breaks you down, it's the way you carry it. Lena Horne. Warren Buffett became one of the richest men in the world by following each of his actions to the next. He didn't do it all at once. He started where he was and then moved slowly and methodically. His biggest advantage, not making greedy or stupid mistakes. No large project is completed in one movement. There are multiple moving pieces that must follow a particular order. It's unrealistic to think that you will adopt all the good habits you think you should today. You may have one great day and then are sure to fall off the horse. In order to build strong habits, you must start with a single habit. Practice it diligently until you do it without thinking. Only then do you move on to the next habit. Small, consistent action beats single Herculean leaps almost every time. Action is passion. The more focused on loving what we do, the less we end up loving it. Cal Newport. Most people should not quit their jobs and go do what they love for the simple reason that most people can't make money doing what they love. And they'll stop loving what they love when they try to make money from it. Maybe they'd start loving what they do if they stopped feeling like they should be doing something else. Instead of finding your passion and then getting to work, get to work and you might find your passion. Action finds false dreams. One way we protect ourselves from failure is by guaranteeing it. We embrace a dream that is so audacious, we will certainly fail. This gives us a certain amount of solace. I never stood a chance anyways. This answer doesn't satisfy anyone dedicated to right action, though. There was no learning, no hypothesis, no test, no uncertainty, no risk. We felt safe in predicting a failure that we couldn't ensure. Right action guarantees progress, even in the face of sabotaging unconscious. Action makes you big. Action means you've risked being wrong. You've put your skin in the game. By having something to lose, you separate yourself from those on the sidelines. A lesson I learned from this ancient Greek culture is the notion of megalopsychon, a term expressed in Aristotle's Ethics, a sense of grandeur that was superseded by the Christian value of humility. There is no word for it in Romance languages. In Arabic, it's called shm, best translated as non-small. If you take risks and face your fate with dignity, there is nothing you can do that makes you small. If you don't take risks, there is nothing you can do that makes you grand. Nothing. And when you take risks, insults by half men, small men, those who don't risk anything, are similar to barks by non-human animals. You can't feel insulted by a dog. Nassim Taleb, The Black Swan. How to create courage. Courage is not something that you already have that makes you brave when the tough times start. Courage is what you earn when you've been through the tough times and you discover they aren't so tough after all. Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath. Forget about sacking up or being a chicken or a bitch or a pussy or a coward. Forget about getting the courage. Forget about your mindset for a minute. Act. Distract yourself from how scary the thing is by being so deeply involved in it there is no room for anything else. Then later, after you've been beaten down, failed, and cried, you'll look up and see what you've done. The messy progress you've made. The unplannable zigzagging course you took to get here. The brave heart you've earned. You'll have forgotten why you were ever afraid. Action calls down the assistance of the gods. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents, meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. I learned a deep respect for one of Goethe's couplets. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. W.B. Murray. There is a magic in action. Christians call it God. Emerson called it the Oversoul. There are 1,000 other names. Nobody can pretend it's not there. Every time I begun taking actions toward a goal, my environment and other people have helped me in unanticipated ways. Maybe people are just drawn to somebody who knows what they want. Maybe when you know what you want, you are able to more easily see and get the things you need. I don't know. It feels like magic. I learned this, at least, by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the directions of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them. Henry David Thoreau. Emergence. Action creates new possibilities that didn't exist before. Every step you take in a certain direction multiplies the opportunities for you in that direction. The opportunities in the other paths shrink away to make room. You choose the direction in which your possible futures emerge. You don't know what exactly this will look like, but you have an idea. Emergence is a powerful force that you engage with every day. It works for both good and ill. It's why it's so easy to stay stuck in depression. Every step into depression creates new, darker possibilities. On the other hand, every step towards a healthy mind and body creates new potential in health. Every healthy meal, workout, or positive thought creates an opening for more. Those who can see one business opportunity can see 1,000. Those who write daily never run out of ideas. Those who hate themselves hate the world. You get to choose every day, every hour. Action balances past, present, and future. When we are thinking, it is almost always about the past or the future. The present gets lost. Thoughts don't have much to do in the present moment. Everything seems to be safe in the present moment. There's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to regret in the present either. So they go off time traveling and find things to worry and dream about. There is a time for this, of course. We need to reflect. We need to plan. Unfortunately, we just default to expending all our energy on these things. Focusing ourselves on action puts the past, present, and future back into balance. Action focuses your mind on creation. When you act, putting some knowledge into action, practicing, making, tinkering, whatever, you force your mind into the creative mode. It is now becoming better at something. It is now making something. You have, in an instant, switched from a consumption mindset to a creation mindset, from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Action triggers your intuition. Steve Jobs said, "I began to realize that an intuitive understanding and consciousness was more significant than abstract thinking and intellectual logical analysis." Indeed! How do we develop our intuitive sense? Action! There are exercises like meditation and stream of consciousness writing that are worth practicing to hone our intuitions as well. Yet there is no better way to develop our intuition than taking action. If you want to develop an intuition for making decisions quickly, then practice making decisions. Force yourself to a 30-second time limit for any non-life-threatening decision. The sign of a true master is the ability to do the work without seeming to have to think about it. The reason a master doesn't have to think is because he has internalized all the processes of the task. His intuition drives his actions. Note that intuitions are specific to one's area of mastery. The chef has an intuition about how things will taste. The general has intuitions about when to attack, and the psychologist has intuitions about what may help a person's psyche. Actions develop your sixth sense. Action puts you into the flow state. Once the details of whatever your craft is are internalized, you are capable of entering the flow state. This is the mental state that allows for the greatest human achievement. Athletes and traders call it being in the zone. It also happens to be the state in which we find the most happiness. We don't feel happy in the moment of flow, but we later describe it as a peak experience. This state is readily available for anyone who has put in many hours of focused, deliberate practice. That is, focused action. Action prioritizes consumption. We are in an age worse than yellow journalism. Everyone is desperate for your attention. If you are not purposeful, you will spend your entire life consuming meaningless content. The internet has put the focus of journalism on a clickable headline with shareable content. Being useful or informative is no longer a priority of the media. My Facebook wall has been making some pretty audacious promises. The one thing you need to know to be successful. The 4 steps to transform your business. This superfruit will melt away fat. People email us demanding our time. Our friends expect us to watch 50 different TV shows. I still have to take that one course to learn that other thing. There is an amazing amount of information out there. At best, we can consume about 0% of it. When we focus on taking action, it becomes obvious what we should read and what shows matter to us, if any. When I began writing this book, I immediately stopped reading 4 books I was in the middle of. I also severely limited my time on email and Facebook and deleted all the apps on my phone meant for consumption, except for the Kindle app. Reading Marcus Aurelius's Meditations was part of the research for this book. Focusing on action acts as a powerful filter for your information and entertainment consumption, limiting the time you spend on it and directing your attention to that with the most value. Fortune telling. Narrow-minded prediction has an analgesic or therapeutic effect. Be aware of the numbing effect of magic numbers. Be prepared for all relevant eventualities. Nassim Taleb, The Black Swan. It feels good to pretend we know what will happen. We want to believe that we can predict the future. We will ignore every piece of evidence of the future and hang on to the words of false prophets. Action helps us avoid this false sense of confidence. It hardens us to what may come. It allows us to prepare for the future while admitting that we don't know what will happen. Action allows serendipity. Horace Walpole coined the term serendipity after reading the Persian fairy tale, The Three Princes of Serendip. The princes in the story were always making discoveries by accidents and sagacity of the things they were not in the quest of. If the princes sat at home bored, they would never make any exciting discoveries. If they were so focused on their quest that it blinded their mind to what was around them, then they would miss many opportunities. Instead, they kept their eyes open for hidden opportunities as they moved along. Serendipity is not available to the stagnant or the narrow-minded, only the open and aware. Action creates beauty. Action doesn't allow for the prettiness of a porcelain doll. Action is not for those who wish to appear untouched and unused. Action is beautiful because of the mess it leaves. The zigzagging path, the scarred face, the broken heart, the true confidence that can only come with experience. Action creates the kind of beauty that deepens with time, not the facade of beauty that fights time with Botox. Humility. My wish for you, Callistos, is that you survive as many battles in the flesh as you have already fought in your imagination. Perhaps then you will acquire the humility of a man and bear yourself no longer as the demigod you presume yourself to be. Dienekes in Stephen Pressfield's Gates of Fire. Your imagination can go forward without the body, but your body cannot leave your mind behind. The battles of the flesh are also of the mind. Reading a book may send your imagination years ahead to an ideal future where you've made no mistakes, where you deal with hardship flawlessly without effort. Knowledge without practice can create a kind of arrogance that is dangerous. The same is true for the successful beginner. If your first venture is wildly successful, you will believe you can do no wrong. This will make you reckless in your second venture. You will be blind to weaknesses in your own plan and to the strengths of your competitors. Action teaches us that nobody is invincible. Those who think they are live in abstraction and leave themselves vulnerable. Lean actions. The business world at large is refocusing on action over abstraction. Eric Ries documents this transformation and lays out the general framework for its management methodology in his great book, The Lean Startup. One of the fundamental keys he discusses is the minimum viable product, MVP. This is a product that is quick and cheap to build and tests a fundamental hypothesis. This allows a startup to prove its concept and raise money, or fail fast and try something new without spending too much cash. It allows established companies to continue innovating without risking their whole business. Smart entrepreneurs and businessmen know how expensive abstraction and overplanning is. They prefer to find out the cheapest way possible, taking action. Testing a product will show us whether or not there is a market for it. Testing our own dream will quickly show us whether or not we really like it or what else we will need to do to accomplish it. MVPs require the courage to put one's assumptions to the test. If customers react the way we expect, we can take that as confirmation that our assumptions are correct. Eric Ries. Of course, most tests don't go on our way. That's why we have to make them cheap. That's why we have to pay attention. Testing the doubters. With the lowered costs of trying things, it means the value of listening to doubters is at a historic low. They don't know what's possible. You don't either. Your effort and audacity to run the test and will let you know for sure. It's not about knowing what will work. It's about finding out. Focus on solutions. So what does it matter when the cause of the darkness differs? Pericles. Action directs your attention to figuring out solutions instead of playing with causes, with no roots. The story behind something often matters less than we think. Better to deal with the thing as it is. Lean Actions Part 2. As you consider building your own minimum viable product, let this simple rule suffice. Remove any feature, process, or effort that does not contribute directly to the learning you seek. Eric Ries. Startups focus their tests to answer the most important questions. You should too. There tends to be an inverse relationship between what is important in our life and how much attention we give it. It's kind of sick. Focus on answering the questions that are driving you most crazy. What do I want to do for a living? Go and try different jobs at the lowest level. What do you enjoy doing? What environments do you feel at home in? What profession has the people in it you like the best? Why am I so out of shape? Stop eating that. Start working out. Stop reading about fitness until you've made a habit out of the first two. Why can't I get a significant other? Try going on dates. Pay attention. You'll find out. Treat your life as an experiment. Train yourself to run tests as quickly and cheaply as possible. Tests don't last forever. Give it 2 weeks. You can do anything for 2 weeks. All life is an experiment. The more experiments you make, the better. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Error becomes information. When right action doesn't work, it provides you information. Scientists know this well, mostly because their failure rates are extraordinarily high. A good scientist sees more in his failures than in his successes. His successes come out of failures. The rest of us aren't different. We just think we are. Action shows us what we're capable of and what we're not. Yet. Our neocortex is good at a lot of things. Its prophesying capabilities have launched us well beyond any other species we know of when it comes to thinking. One thing it's not so good at is determining our abilities. Our ego will either blow our capabilities out of proportion or shrink them into something shameful. For most of us, it errs on the shameful side. Instead of guessing, try. See where your weaknesses lie. Identify your strengths. Action shows you what your plan is worth. The Wright brothers were trying to make a flying machine. So was everybody else. The difference? The Wright brothers had $1,000 to work with, while the others had millions. This doesn't make any sense. Massive corporations with hundreds of scientists and engineers should have easily destroyed these two bicycle-building brothers. They didn't, though, because of one more key difference. The Wright brothers had as many test flights in a single month, 1,900, than their corporate rivals had in a year. How? By focusing on action. They would make a failed test flight, then make minor adjustments to their original plans. They would soon be ready for the next test flight and repeat the process again and again. Their big budget competitors would go back to the drawing board with each failed attempt, wasting massive amounts of time and money. The Wright brothers focused on action and allowed them to learn more quickly and get to an answer. Their competitors' focus on planning made them slow expensive, and ultimately less effective. Action demonstrates what works better than an abstract idea. Action is learning. To repeat, you never forget anything you learn on your own. All secondary experiences may easily be forgotten. Action makes sense of nonsense. Mental clarity is the child of courage, not the other way around. Nassim Taleb, The Bed of Procrustes. The most rational belief may feel irrational. The world is messy, and those who think they've made sense of it are often wrong. Right action makes sense of nonsense when abstraction would just lead to frustration. When you act, you prove whether something will work or not. You take a step. Your eyes are on the path, not on the chaos surrounding it. A tragic mistake. We believe that we must understand something before taking action when, in fact, we can only fully understand something after taking action. Action builds momentum. If you go to the gym when you're tired, you will return home feeling invigorated. Tomorrow, you may look forward to going, but you know you won't need to. If you are craving the pizza but order the salad instead, you will find a sense of pride. The next healthy choice is going to be easier. The blank page is petrifying. Halfway through the page, you don't remember what not having any ideas feels like. This momentum isn't invincible. Every day, there are forces, within you and without, to stop you. People expecting explanations. Your mind telling you to take a break. You're too tired. There is always something new to push past. Consistency in action wins every time. Action uses your weaknesses. To play by David's rules, you have to be desperate. You have to be so bad that you have no choice. Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath. When you take action, your weaknesses don't just fall away, they become useful. Your whole life you have transformed because of your weaknesses. The fat kid who had to get funny to be accepted in school and now has a Comedy Central presence special. The poor kid who had nothing got used to working hard and now runs a business with an unlimited source of energy nobody understands. This is true of many of the strongest entrepreneurs out there. Action was never optional. They had to act to eat. The ugly girl who got made fun of got healthy and is now a Victoria's Secret angel. The lonely girl who had no friends and spent all her time with imaginary playmates now writes best-selling fantasy for a living. You know the cliches. Steve Jobs, the orphan. Richard Branson, the dyslexic. Jay-Z, the thug. The list goes on and on. It turns out that orphans have an advantage in life, at least in the area of achievement, because they have such strong insecurities to push against, to compensate for. How have you compensated for your weaknesses? Has paying too much attention to them made them more or less trouble? If used as launching pads for action, your greatest weaknesses can become your greatest strengths. Regret. Think about the things you regret. Think about the things you know you will regret in the future. The most painful are the acts of omission, of not doing something. Those regrets last forever. They're chronic. The pain that comes from acts of commission is more acute. It hurts more right away. We regret those too, but not for as long. And we almost always learn something. We have another dent in our armor, but we don't die. Regret is eternal for those who don't act. For those who do, regret ceases as soon as action begins. Action is humbling. A plan, graph, or projection can make you feel invincible. It's all there. Can't you see? It's as good as done. Action requires you come back to reality. It forces you to see the details you overlooked, the economic forces you couldn't have predicted, the over-optimism you sold yourself on to sell your investors on. Action is the great equalizer. It will prove to the depressed person that he is not necessarily as bad as he thinks. It will prove to the manic person that they aren't nearly the god they see themselves as. Action shows you when the emperor isn't wearing clothes. Action forces you to deal with the things not as you want or believe them to be, but as they are. Opposition becomes your fuel. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. The hardest thing you have ever done made you bigger. Superheroes can only perform at their peak when a supervillain comes to town. It's why they don't defeat them once and for all. The only reason David's battle with Goliath is memorable is because it didn't look like David should have won. It turns out that the underdog wins all the time, in sports, war, and business. Why? The underdog is under a greater force, so they are able to push back harder. They are able to call in energy, strength, and tactics that the comfortable could never summon. Abstraction will show you it's impossible. Action is the process of making the impossible possible. You know what? I finally learned, after a long time, is basically if you want something enough, unless you're totally without ability, but if you want something enough and keep pushing towards it, you will probably get there because nobody is pushing back with the same amount of energy. Robert Gottlieb, legendary editor who worked with Robert Caro, Joseph Heller, Toni Morrison, and Bill Clinton. Action teaches with respect. When you teach others through your actions, you skip the pretense of knowing what is right for them. You transmit lessons by embodying them instead of trying to talk about them in a persuasive way. There is no single correct way to live. The ways are as many as the people living. Action teaches a general pattern rather than dictating a set path. Action offers lessons in how rather than what. An education in action doesn't offer all the answers, but provides the motivation to look for them. Stop asking, why? Why are you blogging? Why do you want to write a book? Why would you think that people would like that? Why do you want that job? Why do you want to date that person? Why do you deserve to look like your work? Why do you think anybody would care what you have to say? Why do you think your solution is worthwhile? Why? Stop justifying. Start acting. Framing. When your focus is on taking action, you will notice a shift in your mind. It is becoming primed to see opportunities in chaos, because it is beginning to see reality. It's not, what should I think about this? It's, what am I going to do about this? This kind of reframing is fundamental. You can work on it in your mind, consciously reframing situations. Or you can allow it to follow your dedication to taking action, to using whatever pieces are in front of you to build. Maybe not what you had in mind, but something. Action frees you from ideology. The world is always close to catastrophe, but it seems to be closer now. Seeing this approaching catastrophe, most of us take shelter in idea. We think that this catastrophe, this crisis, can be solved by an ideology. Ideology is always an impediment to direct relationship, which prevents action. Jiddu Krishnamurti. Action immediately frees you from your ideologies. The switch is one of impossible and invisible reconciliation of warring ideas to total harmony. Focusing on the work or situation before you as it is makes it clear. The most obvious choice becomes clear as you pay attention. When you let go of an idea of how things should be, then you open yourself up to the best current choice. This is easy to perform in works or sports, provided we have some experience with them. It is more difficult in relationships with other people. Our expectations for how our parents, significant others, or bosses should behave makes us blind to how we could act given the current circumstances. We shouldn't apply romantic ideals to others if we wish to connect with them. Even the expectations that they lift their expectations should be lifted. Create culture. We have to create culture. Don't watch TV. Don't read magazines. Don't even listen to NPR. Create your own roadshow. The nexus of space and time where you are now is the most immediate sector of your universe. And if you're worrying about Michael Jackson or Bill Clinton or somebody else, then you are disempowered. You're giving it all away to icons. Icons which are maintained by an electronic media so that you want to dress like X or have lips like Y. This is shit-brained, this kind of thinking. Terence McKenna. We often look at culture as something that we need to figure out so that we might fit into it or take advantage of it in some way. This is exhausting and ultimately futile. Instead of assuming the posture that we must conform to a culture outside of us, we can instead decide to embody a culture of our own creation. Every action we take defines our personal culture and ripples outward. The more you focus on taking bold actions, the more other people will feel that they too can be bold. The fact that you don't know about Justin Bieber spreads the idea that his every move isn't necessary information to participate in society. Bohemianism has enabled groups of people with unpopular ideals to thrive for centuries. You too can choose to reject, or better, ignore certain rules society has placed before you. Some come at little or no cost, or a change in your personal lifestyle, eating breakfast foods at dinner time. Others are much easier to achieve when you join together with a group of people. It's easier to avoid capitalism when you're living on a commune than in Manhattan. That is all cultural diversion. And what is real is you and your friends and your associations, your highs, your orgasms, your hopes, your plans, your fears. And we are told no, we're unimportant, we're peripheral. Get a degree, get a job, get a this, get a that. And then you're a player. You don't want to even play in that game. You don't want to reclaim your mind to get it out of the hands of the cultural engineers who want to turn you into a half-baked moron consuming all this trash that's being manufactured out of the bones of a dying world. Terence McKenna. Selling tiles. I have a friend who got a job selling tile out of college. He was scared. I talked with him the first day he started. It was nerve-wracking going into a store where I wasn't wanted, he told me. 2 weeks later, we spoke on the phone. He still hadn't made any sales, which was demoralizing, yet he had started to get more comfortable going into stores to pitch them. 6 weeks later, he sold a ton of tile and was having fun refining his pitch. It became a game. I asked him what he was doing that was different. I don't know. Nothing really. I just been doing it a while, I guess. How many times have you heard this story? You've probably experienced it before. The first kiss is terrifying. The second is fun. Nobody makes varsity without experiencing playing first. Nobody writes well without writing badly first. In fact, most writers will tell you nobody writes well. Editing just makes it look that way. Repetitive action not only makes you better, it also makes it easier to begin again tomorrow. Deeper knowing. There is more wisdom in your body than your deepest philosophy. Friedrich Nietzsche in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Do not be concerned about defining your philosophy or beliefs to others. An obsession with explanation will often trick us into thinking we are taking action, when we are just finding a more clever way to stagnate. Remember Nassim Taleb's words. It is much better to do things you cannot explain than explain things you cannot do. There is a deeper level of knowing within your body, beneath your conscious mind, than you will ever be able to explain. A scientific study may find something about increasing creative potential, yet it may have no effect on you. You may not react to things the same way as the majority of their subjects. Remember that few studies find anything that affects 100% of people the same. Trust your own experience, even the one you can't see clearly. There's constantly an n=1 experiment being run down deep in your bones. Forget harm. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. Marcus Aurelius. Action forgets to be harmed. Train for coolness. Voltaire told the first Duke of Marlborough that the secret to military success is tranquil courage in the midst of tumult and serenity of soul in danger, which the English call a cool head. The best way to a cool head? Exposure through action. Training is the accumulation of actions we've taken to prepare for an event. It ups our skill level and creates a familiarity with an experience. In the heat of a crisis, you know exactly how to act because you've acted that way many times before. This is the origin of a common saying in the military. You don't rise to the occasion, you sink to your level of training. Action repels stress. Before going into battle, soldiers check their equipment repeatedly. This is important for safety. Even more than that, it calms the nerves through repetitive action. Before a job interview, the rituals of shaving, ironing your shirt, and shining your shoes center your mind in preparation for a different kind of engagement. Stress is like a mosquito. As soon as you stop moving it, it finds you, feasts on you. Whenever you sit idly, stressful thoughts arrive in swarms. Action acts as a repellent against anxieties, keeping those bloodsuckers at bay. Action builds tolerance for failures. Focusing on taking action shifts the focus from failure to what was learned by the failure. Failure still sucks. We still mourn our loss, but we care more about correcting course. Action seizes. The best men are not those who have waited for chances, but who have taken them, besieged chance, conquered the chance, and made chance the servitor. E. H. Chapin. The most powerful opportunities come when there seem to be none. When everyone else has thrown their hands up in despair, you remain focused on taking action. You see the opportunities because you are engaged in reality, instead of a sad perception, abstraction of it. Warren Buffett loves, from a business perspective, when the stock market crashes, because it gives him an opportunity to get stocks cheap. Many great companies were started in recessions or depressions. The more tired you become, the more tired your competition is. Every day you go back to work, your competitors will drop off. The farther you push, the less competition exists. Bad questions. There are certain questions that can only be overcome by action. Am I happy? As soon as it is asked, happiness disappears. It returns soon after it is forgotten. Oh, what is my purpose in life? This is only honestly answerable for a few people. There is no answer from God or the cosmos. Either you have to settle on something that comes from you, which I think you'll probably don't believe all the way, or you need to give the question up. It took a long time to admit, but I finally found that life is much more about action than purpose. Execution of abstraction matters a lot. Do I love this person? As soon as you ask it, you've fallen out of love. Love may be the least comprehensible thing in existence. A biological explanation is no explanation that matters for living. Why live? Because you're already breathing. Because you can take action. Of course, the real answer lies beyond the because. It's in the action. You take now, next, forever. Applying logic to bad questions is a formula for frustration, stagnation, and deep existential angst. Avoiding these are only possible through right action. Action makes wasting time impossible. When you participate in right action, there's absolutely no way you could be wasting time. You're making progress. You're learning. You're aware of emerging possibilities. Action reveals the real dream. There's a difference between wanting something and liking it. Sometimes we end up liking the things we want. Sometimes we want things we won't actually like. Most of the things that sound amazing in the abstract are actually immensely tedious. Filmmaking, painting, and other quote-unquote dream careers have been romanticized to the point where we have been meant to feel guilty if we don't wish them for ourselves. Our imagination tells us fairy tales about these lives, about the fame, the wealth, the happiness. They might lead to a happily ever after for you. You might find the tedium and downsides are worth the satisfaction. You also might find that they're not at all as dreamy as you imagined. There's only one way to find out. Trying quote-unquote fantasy careers and other options for yourself. Not reading about them in books. Experiencing them in practice. Taking action is freeing yourself from fairy tales and connecting to reality, to the actual process of getting somewhere. Maybe you'll like what you want. Maybe your dream is your real dream. You won't know until you move towards it. Action defies quote-unquote why. When embarking on any journey, the hero is bound to be asked why by those being left behind. Sometimes there is a perfectly good answer. Sometimes there isn't. And sometimes there shouldn't be. The world begs you to justify yourself. You beg you to justify yourself. To explain exactly why you do what you do. They demand a story that makes sense. Sometimes there isn't one. At least not one you can put into words. The only real story is your actions. They may seem random at first, like they don't make sense. After a while, though, they will. After a while, they will be clear enough. They will carry an explanation beyond anything you could make up. Action strips away unhelpful comparisons. It is only in the midst of dedicated action that we lose our ability to compare ourselves to another. There is no better training for self-reliance than action. It takes all of our attention and puts it to use. On the other hand, it is nearly impossible not to compare ourselves to others in abstraction. You set goals based on the goals of others. You set expectations based on the expectations of others. You decide your worth based on others. Competition can certainly get us moving. The danger is in competing with someone running a different race, or someone who's way too far ahead. In the first case, you'll get focused on the wrong things. In the second, you'll get demoralized and lose your motivation. Action frees you from these dangers. Then, eventually, it makes you invincible to them. Action embraces amor fati. My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati. That one wants nothing to be different. Not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. Friedrich Nietzsche. Ecce homo. Everything is used up. The good and the bad alike. Everything is transformed or amplified for the good of life. Everything in our history helps push us. Every weakness creates our strengths. Everything we must do, we now get to do. Everything that happens is meant to happen. Not because it was ordained, but because it did happen. And whatever happens must be used. Suckers try to win arguments. Non-suckers try to win. Nassim Taleb. Action is about the ultimate win. It transcends argument. Argument is derived from, and therefore secondary to, actions and their consequences. Action immediately removes you from the squabble. It separates you from those afraid to make a move. You cannot take action and remain petty, immaterial, or inane. Action doesn't pretend to have an answer for everything, but it does accept that it may be the answer. Part 6. Shaping actions. Be great in act, as you have been in thought. Suit the action to the word, and the word to the action. Shakespeare. What is useful? Ruminating or getting back to work. Thinking about her saying no or finding out if she will say yes. Considering the lives you could have lived or taking stock of what is available to you in this life. Researching nutrition or cutting sugar out of your diet. Wishing your partner would be different or giving them love for who they are. Reading a list about what successful people do or taking the first step on the project you've been putting off. The work is more useful every time. The work required to love, to create, to live. Force future action. Demosthenes, the great Greek orator, holed up in a dugout he built in order to educate himself. He shaved half his head so that he would be too embarrassed to go outside. He shaped his environment to force right action in the future. Look around. What can you do today that will force desired behavior tomorrow? Demosthenes was asked, after he had become famous for his speeches, what the most important traits of speech-making were. He summed it up in 3 words. Action, action, action. Process. Nick Saban, the head coach of the University of Alabama football team, keeps his team focused on the process. Don't think about winning the SEC championship. Don't think about the national championship. Think about what you need to do in this drill, on this play, in this moment. That's the process. Let's think about what we can do today, the task at hand. The step in front of you is the most important thing in the world. When you get to the big game, then that will be the most important thing in the world. Your biggest opportunity is always right now. Simplicity. We open this book with the following quote. It's worth revisiting. The cucumber is bitter, then throw it out. There are brambles in the path, then go around. That's all you need to know. Marcus Aurelius. Problem, action. Problem, action. Poke and prod. Find a way. Action simplifies the process while dealing with complex problems. Action allows improvisation. Post-flinch push. When jarred unavoidably by circumstances, revert at once to yourself and don't lose the rhythm more than you can help. You'll have a better grasp of harmony if you keep going back to it. Marcus Aurelius. Broken, unbroken, continuous right action is impossible. Unpleasant and pleasant surprises are one of the few things guaranteed in this life. A surprise causes us to flinch away, to take a step back and second guess ourselves. We can't be in a perfect flow all the time. The idea is to shrink our time spent with inaction and maximize the time we spend taking action. It's not all or nothing. It's incremental. It's practice. Don't fear the flinch. Use it as a trigger. Train yourself to lean into the flinch. All it takes is awareness and willingness to be uncomfortable for a second. You aren't going to die. How to determine right action. 2 rules. Stop considering whether you should. Stop considering if you are ready. It gets harder and easier. Action pushes you higher. The problems you face don't get smaller. They get bigger. Much bigger. That's the bad news. The good news? You're more capable. You've proven your mettle. The dragon is bigger because you are stronger. Action will be your legacy. He who has a vehement desire for posthumous fame does not consider that every one of those who remember him will himself also die very soon. Marcus Aurelius. We can't escape the fact that we wish to leave the world with a reminder that we were here too once. On some level, it doesn't make much sense. The mind that is wishing to be remembered will probably be gone. It won't even have a chance to think about being remembered. Some people can afford to put their name on a football stadiums or tall buildings. Some people have left large tombs. Some have left autobiographies. Some have left massive fortunes. Some have left scientific breakthroughs. Some glorious son of a gun out there left us the PB&J sandwich. These are great contributions. However, the accumulation of interactions you have with other people will certainly be greater. The way you are in the world matters more than what you make in the world. This is important. You spread whatever you are. If you are decisive, emotionally stable, and optimistic, then you will give others the permission to be the same. When you free yourself from overthinking and commit to action, you will free others. Not by spreading the word or talking about this book, although that would be great, but by just being that way. Think of a time when you've been afraid to make a leap. You'll look around for others who have made the leap. Then you see it's a possibility. When you smile at someone instead of worrying about what they're thinking about you, you make their day better, and your day better. When you do the thing you're embarrassed to do, you provide relief for everyone around who is too scared. When you believe the action you take are more important than an abstract purpose, you may pull an onlooker out of an existential crisis with you. If you can do it, they can too. These moments multiply. The person you smiled at while waiting in the line at the grocery store was planning on committing suicide later that day. Now they are second-guessing it. They may continue to live and provide good for others, who will then provide more good for others. Staying calm in the midst of an emergency will give solace to others. Now others will gain solace from them. It's been called the butterfly effect. We, as humans, are terrible at believing what isn't right in front of us. We sometimes feel like we're doing nothing, like our lives don't matter. This is impossible. If you think you can't create any change, then you will create change by spreading the idea of hopelessness. Everything you do matters. Act accordingly. Act well at the moment, and you have performed a good action for all eternity. Johann Caspar Lavater. About the author. Kyle Eschenroder is a writer who has been an entrepreneur, day trader, and whatever else sounded good at the time. Tweet him at Kyle SCHEN. Excuse me. If you want to kickstart your action habit, Kyle has created a course for you at theactioncourse.com. Thanks for listening, and Audible hopes you've enjoyed this program.